Starship Troopers is a 1997 military action satire directed by Paul Verhoeven, loosely based on the controversial novel of the same name. Johnny Rico, our protagonist, lives in a distant future in which democracy is limited to those who have earned citizenship through federal service, usually military. He joins the mobile infantry, not for this reason, but to pursue Carmen, the woman he loves. Carmen breaks off their relationship, Rico accidentally gets a man killed during training, and now at his lowest, he considers leaving the military. War breaks out between the Federation and the Bugs, alien arachnids, and Rico decides to stay. After a series of conflicts, Rico and his roughnecks defeat the Bugs, capture their leader, and the war begins to turn in their favor. The novel of the same name takes a hard, far-right stance on the military, suggesting that only those who serve their country should have the right to guide the future of the nation. The right to vote, according to the novel, is no right at all, and that it needs to be earned through federal service, proposing a form of lesser democracy for his country. The author, Robert A. Heinlein, stood by his controversial political beliefs. Director Paul Verhoeven and screenwriter Ed Neumeyer, the team behind RoboCop, teamed up to tell the same story but with the opposite outlook. They staunchly opposed Heinlein's ideas and wanted to go a different route. They altered the story and made it a satire about the misuse of American military force and the manner in which the government and society at large fetishizes war. If the film's hyperbolic imagery and mock propaganda shorts were not enough to make that clear, Verhoeven has confirmed this in multiple interviews. The film's harsh criticism of the military made it through normally cautious executives because the studio was in a transitionary phase. Quote, "All the satire was in the script from the beginning, but they might not have been really aware of it, or have read it precisely. By the time one of them might have understood what movie I was going to make, he was already gone. The next group came in. I think we slipped through the labyrinth of changing regimes until finally the movie was done. It was not that I was lying to anybody, it was already in the script. All this ironic stuff, all this hyperbolic stuff, all this playing with fascism or fascist imagery to point out certain aspects of American society, that was all in the script." Unquote. When the film debuted, some misinterpreted the fairly obvious satire as the opposite of its intention. Of course, that is always the danger of satire, but the film has since been understood as something more meaningful by its audience. So what is all this, as the director put it, hyperbolic fascist imagery in Starship Troopers? Let's go through this step by step.
Why are only citizens allowed to vote?
It's a reward. What the Federation gives you for doing federal service.
Look, when you vote, you are exercising political authority. You're using force. And force, my friends, is violence. The supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
Naturalization, immigration documentation, and other factors that go into being a citizen in a new country are not relevant in the future of Starship Troopers. The Federation consists of all of the Earth and its outer space territories. Everyone is part of a singular nation-state that spans the galaxy. Its exact reach is unclear, but based on the film's assertion that faster-than-light travel is possible, it could be highly expansive. The point is that citizenship within the Federation is not mandated by birth in its territory the way it is in present-day Earth, nor does becoming a citizen have anything to do with immigrating. Becoming a citizen in the Federation has everything to do with federal service, notably military. If there is any confusion about this, non-citizens are called civilians in Starship Troopers. The opposite of citizen in our parlance is foreigner. In other words, those who do not serve in the military in this film are considered outsiders and not truly part of the Federation. So what does being a citizen mean? Various things, but first and foremost, it means the ability to vote. In America, universal suffrage exists, save for a few exceptions like those convicted of felonies. In Starship Troopers, only those who have achieved this citizen status can vote, and the film makes it clear that the predominant way to achieve citizenship is through the military. It is the only way, as the film says, to guarantee citizenship.
Infantry, sir.
Good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
Rico's teacher says that democracy was a failed experiment. In the novel, this is all sincere. In the film, this is meant to shine a light on the dangers of fascism. Although the film does not explicitly say so, the implication that the majority of voters are soldiers suggests that the military rule of the future is self-perpetuating. To put it in more modern-day context, it would be as if the law only allowed members of one political party, of fairly like-minded individuals, to vote.
And I know it's my choice. I was wondering, what would you do if you were me?
Figuring things out for yourself is the only freedom anyone really has. Use that freedom. Make up your own mind, Rico.
Choice is brought up in Starship Troopers, but the military citizenship track only creates the illusion of choice in their society. It would be as if, today, we could only choose between a conservative Republican and a very conservative Republican. The requirements for citizenship, and therefore voting, are akin to real-life controversial laws that are designed to keep those who a political party finds undesirable out of voting booths, through using covert language to mask their true intentions. Speaking of politics, one soldier says she joined the military for citizenship because she wants to run for office one day. Although military service is often considered a positive for one's political career in modern-day America, it is certainly not a requirement. 2 of the 3 most recent presidents have had no military training, and the other only in the Air National Guard, whose service was not without controversy. In Starship Troopers, citizens are mostly veterans, and the people they are voting for are mostly all veterans too, further enforcing a clear preference towards a hawkish government. Another terrifying vision of limited democracy in Starship Troopers comes in the form of one line. One character, when explaining why she joined the military to earn citizenship, claims she did so simply because she wants to be a mother. Only citizens can earn a license to breed. Population control mandated by law is not unheard of, even in the real world. However, in Starship Troopers, there is no indication of overpopulation, suggesting that the license to have a child has less to do with control of an inflating population and more to do with making certain that only some people who the government deem as desirable are allowed to procreate and pass down genetic traits and personal values throughout the generations. Only citizens can reproduce, and citizens are typically veterans. In other words, this is another way in which the military state in Starship Troopers is able to maintain its power, making certain that dissenters die off this generation and do not pass down their radical ideologies to their children. Not genetically, obviously, but through values. It's a kind of social eugenics. Eugenics was a misguided philosophy of the first half of the 20th century that aimed to improve the human race through selective breeding. As a practice, eugenics has been largely discredited as quackery at the very least, and dangerous at its worst. Although only mentioned in passing in Starship Troopers, its inclusion tells us a lot about the military state depicted in the film, mainly that it bears an uncomfortable resemblance to Germany under the Nazi regime. There are other references to the Nazis in the film. The first scene shows the mobile infantry in a stance that is remarkably similar to soldiers in Nazi rallies, as seen in Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will. More on propaganda later. The uniforms of the science officers closely resemble those of the Wehrmacht during the time period. Even the Sky Marshal standing at the lectern looks like Hitler addressing his supporters, while denigrating another people.
To ensure that human civilization, not insect, dominates this galaxy now and always.
Central to the film is the concept of dehumanization of the enemy. Dehumanization is the denial of human qualities to other people, often through propaganda, referring to your enemy as animals or even employing hyperbolic rhetoric like evil to describe an entire society. The term evil is typically only applied to monsters and demons from religion, but it is through this dehumanization of the enemy that a population is more willing to kill people of another country. Governments represent enemy soldiers as less than human so that their soldiers, and indeed voters, will support a war that they may otherwise consider mass murder. This is seen in Starship Troopers in various ways. First, and most obviously, the enemy is dehumanized by the simple fact that they are not human. The film presents us with enemies that look as alien as possible with no outward human characteristics. Not willing to learn their real species name or assign them a proper scientific name due to inability to communicate, the Federation simply refers to them in the media as bugs, which discredits their intelligence and their right to live and defend themselves.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
This is a direct reference to a phrase from 19th century America. The only good Indian is a dead Indian. It is popularly credited to Philip Sheridan, though he denies ever saying that. This was later modified and reused by American soldiers in World War II. It should also be noted that at the climax of the film, Carl's psychic abilities allow him to read the thoughts of the alien leader. He declares that the alien is afraid, and that fact is the greatest victory of the film, not saving lives or rescuing someone, making your enemy terrified. The only human being that regards the aliens with any kind of respect is a science teacher who claims that they have certain advantages over human biology, like the ability to reproduce in large numbers. although considering the students are also dissecting the bugs in school shows a clear refutation of their rights. Carmen is physically repulsed by the bugs. She wants to join the military, but she clearly does not have the stomach for the horrors of war. She becomes a captain of a ship. From the vantage point of space, she never needs to see the blood and guts of the actual ground fighting. She can bomb from orbit. We like to assign a good versus evil narrative in war. Our enemies are inhuman monsters, and we are completely in the right. The military is glorified, and the enemy is dehumanized. So, in Starship Troopers, who started this conflict anyway? The film actually makes it clear that it was humans who first encroached on bug territory. Mormon missionaries created a settlement on an alien world, knowing full well that it was a quarantined zone. They were killed by the bugs for trespassing. But that's not all. The fact that the school has access to bugs for dissection and the fact that the Federation knows so much about them suggests that the Federation is frequently engaged with the bugs. The Federation is not leaving them alone. The Air Marshal decrees that humans should control the galaxy, implying that the humans are not leaving the bugs alone in their borders. The Federation is clearly trying to drive them out in hopes of gaining new territory. When the bugs launch a counteroffensive and strike at Earth, the humans see this as an act of aggression rather than what it is, an act of self-defense. Only one reporter seems to question the military's claim of moral high ground, but he is quickly shot down.
Some say the bugs were provoked by the intrusion of humans into their natural habitat, that a live and let live policy is preferable to war with the bugs.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all!
If Starship Troopers itself was not clear enough about who the invaders truly are, an episode of Futurama of all things, parodying the film, makes it that much more obvious.
This is your home planet? We're the evil invading aliens?
Correct.
Then I guess you learned a valuable lesson. Don't mess with Earth!
Publicly voicing opposition to a war, especially calling your own government the antagonists, is not always met with intelligent debate. It often conjures up sentiment among those who support the war that dissenters are traitors and don't support the troops. But there is a difference between being opposed to a needless conflict and berating soldiers who are only doing their jobs. That's an important distinction to make, and one that does not always get added to the conversation. Starship Troopers makes that distinction. Carl Jenkins, a friend of Rico and Carmen, is a scientist and leader in the war effort. What he does, the decisions he makes, the experiments he performs, are the subject of covert ridicule by the film. Rico and Diz, members of the mobile infantry, are portrayed in a more positive light. They are largely shown to be selfless, brave, and honorable. Starship Troopers does not attack the soldier, it attacks politicians. This is a critical distinction. Verhoeven is highly critical of the culture of fetishization of the military, but rather than showing a noticeably dark future in which a fascist military has taken over the world and everyone is shown to be downtrodden, he created a false utopia. Everyone is smiling, but everyone is fooling themselves. It's challenging to show a dark future that appears bright. He has said, quote, "War makes fascists of us all. If I tell the world that a right-wing, fascist way of doing things doesn't work, no one will listen to me, so I'm going to make a perfect fascist world. Everyone is beautiful, everything is shiny, everything has big guns and fancy ships, but it's only good for killing bugs." Unquote.
A murderer was captured this morning and tried today.
Guilty.
Sentence, death. Execution tonight at 6, all net, all channels. Would you like to know more?
Someone is tried, convicted, and will be executed on live television. The fact this all happens within the course of one day shows that the justice system has been corrupted. Verhoeven's vision of the future turned out to be, as the AV Club from The Onion said, prophetic. America is engaged in a never-ending war. Verhoeven has said of this, quote, "There was a built-in situation that we sensed at the time, and that was visible. The New Conservatives had already written many articles, and I think we used some of that thinking and what we saw happening. Although this was all still during the Clinton years, of course, it was vaguely there. And of course, the movie is all about, let's all go to war and let's all die. We were just tapping into things that we saw at the time and then extrapolated, unfortunately, into a direction that life took." Unquote. This brings us to propaganda. At various points in Starship Troopers, the action stops, and we, the audience, become television viewers in the future. We watch propaganda films reminiscent of World War II shorts meant to drum up support for the war, as well as demonize and dehumanize the enemy. The point is to show government control over the media. All television stations appear to be unified into something called the Federal Network. In other words, everything is run by the federal government. No independent, free press.
Fully automatic burrito. Who wants to hold it?
Citizen rule. People making a better tomorrow.
The most fascinating part of this use of propaganda is that at the end of the film, the regular flow of Starship Troopers bleeds into the propaganda network, making us the targets of propaganda. Do we accept the smiling faces killing the allegedly villainous bugs, or has much of what we've seen been a lie? Verhoeven turns the ending into a meta experience, forcing the audience into the uncomfortable realization that much of what we have witnessed is a form of military propaganda, and that if we cheered for the Federation, we may have bought into that without thinking about it. In a way, Starship Troopers is an incredible experiment for the audience. If watched as a glorification of the military, it says something about the viewer. If watched as satire, it says something else. The film is like a test of who we are, what our politics are, and how we choose to see the world. And based on such diverse feelings among critics, it appears as though everyone has a different reaction. Thanks for watching.